Boom. All right, that should do it. All right. I have just struggled to get a stable internet connection. So it's not my normal technical difficulties of my own doing. The ice is melting. I think it's taking the internet down, but I appear to be up. Can I please get an amen if everybody can hear me? Don't think anybody's here. Oh, I'm not seeing any comments. Oh, there's Jessica. What's happening? Amen. Thank you. Okay, got you. Hello, everybody. Okay, sorry about that. Boy, there's always something coming up here, but we're still going to get this going. I'll give everybody just a second to probably get checked in, like a minute or two here. Then we'll get started and roll through this information fairly quickly. This is going to be a real long one because it's not that type of info per se, but I think it will still be good and informative. Spirit is the one that pushes me to do these. Or sometimes it could be, there's a difference between spirit as in terms of when you feel some of these either beings that could be angelic or some of these light beings or other beings that come through, and you've got the star beings that come through. Look, I can't speak for everybody else, only myself, but when the information from the star beings comes through, it's different. In terms of the vibration, is not like some fools say always demonic. It is not what I get, but it is more scientific and more science-based and more experienced and based. So that's the only thing I can say for myself, all right? But that is a noticeable difference between their energy and the energy of like, per se, those supernatafim that I experienced when I died. So I just go with it, though. I don't fight it anymore and try to do the classifications like I used to. This is this and this is that. I'm tripped out on classifications, and sometimes it's about letting go of that and just kind of going with it. So anyway, see you all checked in here. Joyce Hartman, thank you for being here. Quintessession, thank you for being here. Roger Blair, Sunfire Tamara, thank you for being here. Jessica, thanks for being here. Jessica, I hope you had a good time at that conference. You might want to tell everybody about the movie you're just going to be in. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it. I've got to see the clips yet, but I'm going to check it out. So hopefully the conference went good and you had a good time. I'm glad you're getting invited to those, and I hope you keep getting invited to more and more. So, cool. Genesis Makeup, thank you for being here also. Cool. All right, what's happening? Okay, so what we'll do is start off. What I want to talk about, this is just one of my experiences. So by no means am I authority on these beings, okay? I can just tell you what I experienced. And this regards the Andromedans. And look, in my opinion, when you look at not just the community, but the subject, the whole topic in this area, ufology and contact, yada, yada, about the Andromedans, to me, it gets a bit nebulous. And I say that because it's so general. Well, the lighting's bad in here, isn't it? Anyway, the term is too general and nebulous in terms of, say, oh, this is the Andromedans this person's dealing with. They say the Andromedans, and what the heck does that really mean? All right, that is a huge galaxy. And that's like saying, okay, you meet cats from another galaxy meet me, and I tell them, well, they start saying, well, hey, that guy's a Milky Way-in. That's always my joke with that, but that's the way it sounds like, a Milky Way-in. Where the heck in the Milky Way? It's a huge galaxy. What part of it? See, so just saying the term Andromedans is too nebulous for me. But sadly, these beings didn't give me enough of an information that was more than that. And the name that I got with them was Andromeda Council. I had to look that up, and then I started coming across some things that was some cheesy new age stuff, but then there was some truth in there. So I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater and separate what the actual good information is contained within that. Change the light in here. All right. See, they're changing. There, that's better. Okay. All right. So anyway, so just too nebulous of a term, but an Andromedans What we'll do is go through the ones that I encountered, I experienced, and the experience itself. Then we'll go through some of the beings that I've talked to other contactees to say they're in contact with or that I've read about, and both. We'll put those together and maybe throw some technology in it that I think comes from that sector of space. Because we know Andromedan is a large galaxy. You've got Triangulum that we've talked about. We've got Andromeda and we've got the Milky Way that are all going to collide and become one at one point. So I think that's fascinating. Anyway, so going on to the to this thing, got a few pictures that I'll show. Excuse me, not as many as normally, but enough to really give you a good vibe. Okay, so this will go to an experience that I had in 1996. All right, I was with the lady that I'd had other encounters with, but we're at a point where we're like kind of breaking up, not really together anymore. But they're about to move, and she was still taking care of the house that they had lived in before it sold. So we're in the backyard. It's about, I don't know, probably close to 2, 3 in the morning. It's late. All right, but we're back laying on this trampoline and just looking up at the stars. It's really a kind of a clear night. You can just see the stars real bright, and we're just talking a little bit, and we just started sitting there, just laying there, still just watching the stars. Then as this happens, I notice on the right side there's these trees and this pole, like a telephone pole against the fence in their backyard. And I start seeing coming up by this telephone pole, up by these trees, what looks like a cloud floating up. Okay. And this thing is floating. It's literally like a fog. You know, like how like when they do those fog machines, how they make the fog roll out like that. It looked like that coming up from this tree. And it comes up and it's going over, okay, and it's accumulating. And at this point, she's still like laying there and she don't see it. And I am looking at this thing though. And it starts coming over. And let me tell you, okay, and look, I never lie to y'all, all right? So we'll keep it 100%. I was much younger then, sometimes a little bit on the arrogant. And when I say this, I was having experiences always, and I did so much research trying to back up what was happening to me, trying to understand it, that I started accumulating knowledge on so many multiple times that I thought I was kind of good. And at that point, I had been really into bion research, SAPA bions that Wilhelm Reich was doing. And then that took me over to the work of Trevor Constable. I was going to show pictures of them, but I'm not going to do that since I'm somewhat still slow with that. But anyway, there's a book by that's out still. It's called SAPA Bions. People can read, which is more simplistic bions that he made. And I was very interested in how they were capable of the ablation of cancer cells and leaving regular ones, non-malignant cells intact. So I was very much into that research, and that took me into the cloud busters. And I started building. When I found out I had a friend that built me a couple that worked at the Omnisphere down there, he built me a couple of cloud busters. They weren't that hard, okay? But he built me 2 of them that recorded the things, stuff that I got from, I think it was Borderland Sciences then, and also Trevor Constable's book, Cosmic Pulse of Life. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But look, because of my research in that and all the work I've been doing with cloud busting and trying to control Orgone/Prana and realizing that was a part of the craft and all that, I thought that this cloud must be coming up because of my personal power or something. Okay. I would just think I'm so into this. I've been dealing with so much of this. I'm manifesting something here. Okay. Which was not exactly the case, but forgive me. All right. That's what was in my mind. All right. Anyway, this thing comes over, and as it comes over and forms more, okay, and it starts rotating. And at this point, when it comes overhead, she goes like that. So she hadn't seen this thing coming over and twisting already. I mean, she seemed to notice it when it started twisting, almost so a vortex spinning type of a deal. Okay. And as this happened, you start seeing what looked like shooting stars coming out of it and going into it. Okay. And then looking like outside of where it is, we there see like what looks like a satellite bouncing around out there. Okay, but that's outside of this cloud that's here doing this. Was that is all taking at that point. Okay, so this goes on for a while, and there's a great elation that comes with this. Okay, a great elation, and then I start seeing more what seems to be shooting stars coming in out of this thing. It's come closer. I'm going towards it, and all of a sudden, I'm not on that trampoline anymore. I'm standing in this room. Okay, now I'm going to show you this room. Now, when I tell you that, I don't know exactly how I got there. It seemed like I kind of went into the vortex of the cloud, and then was kind of just there, standing there. Okay, and I know it wasn't just a holographic projection because I touched a few things and was going to have some physical interaction that separates this from being a astral experience to a real one. Okay, so I'm going to show you the picture real quick. Let me pull that up with my limited skills. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, took me a second there, but I'm getting it. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm on this. So I had to reboot. I had to read. Okay, I think that's it. There it is. All right, so I'm going to show this, and I'm just going to talk and keep talking. All right, this is the illustration from Kasara of this experience, and I'll tell you how it happened and progressed as we go through here. Okay, here it is. And I call this the biobed experience. When I am in this room, I'm at this room, okay, and in there, let me say, she did a very good job, but as far as the contraptions in the back, I remember there being in the far left above the black box. I remember two black boxes in that room, but in the back there being one of these machines that looks like it's not a satellite thing, but it's in the back left. Okay, I remember that, and also especially this thing on the other side, on the right side, that looks almost like a street lamp. And I don't know what that really was because that wasn't what gave the light for the room. You know what I'm saying? Not, but anyway, that room was lit up. So anyway, as this begins, okay, I'm standing at the entrance of this room, and these beings are there. In the back is Mana. Okay, Mana is I've showed you Mana before. I've seen Mana on different ships in different experience. Okay, it's there, and it seems to me like it didn't really communicate with me as much as it's seems to be. He seems to be it's more supervising. Next was this being right here, who is I kept getting medical off this being. It had, I guess you could say androgynous, but almost a male type of feeling to it. All right, and it was. I'll do another comparison with that one. I'll show you two other pictures here in a second because that it reminds me of another being that I've showed you. That's the hybrid mother of the hybrids. All right, and it's not that being, but it looks like they could be related almost, or like cousins, if you know what I'm saying. So I'll show you a picture of that being later. And I tend to call them sometimes pear heads because they're I don't know their heads kind of remind me of upside down pears that are bulged a little. Anyway, the other beings in there are these little blue beings. All right, and these guys are little. They're even smaller than what she has represented here. To say these guys are knee high is pushing it. Okay, man, I'm 5'11". To say they're knee high for me is pushing it. They're very little. And here's what's interesting about this experience and about some of these all together is that it's like in this environment, it's not always individual telepathy coming from each creature. Sometimes it's like you're getting information from the environment itself because these ships are alive. And there's like a symbiotic like a neural net type of connection, I believe. All right, so it's like I'm getting information just from the environment itself, which often can be questions before I ask them, but not as much this time as in other experiences. So anyway, sorry, take a drink here. Okay, and I'll go over a sketch of one of these little blue guys. As a matter of fact, here we're gonna what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to this picture, all right? But I'm gonna show you something else. I'm sorry, I've got my little outline here, but I'm gonna start flowing with this as it flows to me, okay? Instead of getting holed up trying, oh, I gotta stick to the outline. I'm not gonna do that. That'll be good to get this out of the way anyway. Okay, here we go. Right here. Okay, so this is one of these little blue beings. And she did it. She did a couple of sketches for me to get this one right. Okay, this is sorry again. This was made. She did this for me in 2012. All right. All right. So the thing with these beings, I want to point out is this one word to say really little. They were blue. These are about as close to what we call grays I've ever seen. Okay, and they weren't gray at all. But I mean, this their general humanoid physiognomy seemed closer to like what we consider grays looking like, quote unquote. But they weren't gray, like I said. But they were very blue, and they had on these blue outfits. Okay, and what she's representing here is along what to me looked like racing stripes along the side and down the side, like racing stripes for one of those uniforms, were these lighter, almost white blue strips. You can see them there. And each one of these beings was holding one of these devices. It looked like almost a copper metal type rod, more metal type rod, silverish rod going up, holding onto an odd shaped crystal. And it makes me look much more into what we call now quasi crystallography, okay, which is the growing in different symmetries and the growing of crystals. And I've got some pictures about what crystallography is. We'll show maybe later. But anyway, but that's this takes us into an each one of these had like a little odd symbol on them on these crystals, and emitting from them were these little living moving things. Okay, and my brother Mitch, he works with fiber optics and cable stuff. He said, "Man, B to me, those look like some type of probably living fiber optics." All right, and each one of them was holding one of these things, but those little silk things are moving. And you know, when talking about crystallography, it makes me look into something like natural light. I've got pictures of that too, but you all can just look that up. Natural light is Natrolite, and there's also, is it Stratolite? There's others, but if you look at some of the formations of those and how they come off the crystal itself, it looks somewhat similar to that. But this was a little different in terms that it was more alive. All right, and these guys were little, and I could say this too, when they started working on me, because this is as close as I've ever been to y'all, what I could say is experimented on, but it wasn't like that. Okay. Anyway, we'll go through that in a second. But I will say this: people had asked me, did they feel like robots or cyborgs? I said, to me, they felt like they was doing their job, but I felt emotion coming off them, like concern, like they cared about what they were doing, like they cared about what my state of emotion was. You know what I'm saying? That's what I got off these beings. I didn't get the computer feeling from them. So, okay, we'll stop there. Now, when I talked about the other being that's in the middle that I kept getting medical off of, there's another being that I've encountered in another experience that we've talked about, and I'm going to show that being just so you can see the comparison. It's going much better now. Seems like the internet's cleared up a little. Thank you, Lord. Okay, here you go. Boom. All right, this is the mother of the hybrids. This is what I call her, and this was from a different experience, though. This is the first experience of missing time that I've talked about during my adult onset experiences. This being was on board that craft, and I've mentioned before I got a lot of responses on this being, and it to me looked somewhat similar to the being that you saw standing in the middle of the room of the biobed. Now they weren't exact, okay, but they just have similarities. And this being was taller and larger than that being that was in the biobed room. That room in the bio bed, the being in the bio bed room was about my size. So, less than 6 feet or less. It wasn't nearly as big as this being here. I said this being was probably, around 7 feet tall or so, something like 6.5, 7 feet tall. It was much taller than me. I can see that. So anyway, but just when I was, and at no point did this being say, "Oh, I'm from the Andromeda." It wasn't like that. So I'll throw that out there. I don't know where this being was from. Okay, but I call it the mother of the hybrids, and I looked around for a long time at different sketches I saw of beings that were similar, and I saw some people describe them as pair heads also. So I found that interesting. Some of those were even done by Christine, and it's interesting to see things we could do before the take of AI. Okay. Now just a little bit more about this general experience. All right. So so I'll go back to that picture. I didn't mean to take everybody off, but it was important, I think, to get that out as expediently as possible. All right. Okay, boom, back to this. Okay, so something else I want to mention. In the back is something that was there, that back panel. And again, it's another one of these panels on these craft that I've been on. To me, they look similar to that game I had as a kid that was called Simon Says. And it had like these two a red, yellow, and a blue thing. It's the way they were shaped and the way they were placed in that panel on that game. You know what I mean? These panels seem similar to that. And I know it's interesting because the beings don't have to touch the panels like we did that game. I think just being near it or roving their hand across does it. Okay, going back to these blue beings again, something that I was picking up, okay, that is being communicated to me is that there was a connection between the white stripes that you see on their uniforms to the devices that they're holding is connected symbiotically to the craft and their bioplasma, their prana. Okay, that's all a part of each other. That's what I picked up concerning that. And during this experience, when I come in they're talking, I ask, who are y'all? And what I caught was Andromeda Council is what I got. And it seems to be coming from like all of them from the ship, everything. Okay, so I can't tell you exactly who. And mentioned before, these guys are little. I mean, this wasn't a forced deal. So they asked me to sit, they were telepathically communicating with me to sit down to lay down on this bed. There's this bed in the middle of this room. And this bed, I can tell you exactly what it looked like. It was absolutely beautiful, okay? On the top, it looked like all these crystals that were kind of meshed together. When I say that, it looked like blue sapphire, emeralds, quartz, maybe diamonds, and calcite, all fused together under the top of this bed. And when I say that, each one of them had like a point on it. So it looked like it was very crafted very well. And they start asking me to lay down on this thing. I'm picking that up. And I was like, I said verbally, nah, because, it looks like it's going to hurt. Those things look pointed and they look like they would cut and not be comfortable to lay down on at all. And I'm picking up that, no, it won't. So I go up and I kind of touch the top of some at the edge there, at the bottom, like the purple ones there. I touched those, okay? And I couldn't feel them. So I don't know if there must be some sort of field between them and touching the top of it, some invisible field. So I did it. I laid down on the thing, okay? I wasn't being forced to. And if I was aggressive and I would have thrown like a front kick at one of these little dudes, I think would probably have knocked all three of them through the wall. They were not aggressive. It just wasn't an experience like that. But my curiosity gets the best of me. Okay, I'd be somewhat in awe when this stuff happens to me. Okay, even if I don't understand it all, but I'd be blown away. As my brother Mitch would say, "You be tripping out, man." Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, all right. Oh, something else. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little, but y'all stay with me, okay? Something I was gonna say. Those little screens on the side, those weren't in that room. That's something that Christine said she added. She says sometimes it's like spirit just has me add stuff. So I have no problem with that, even though those weren't there. But the other things were the black box, the two black boxes, and that thing in the back left were all there, and the lamp up there, the street light. That's what it looks like to me. Anyway, okay, back to this. Okay, so I lay down on this thing. There was no pain, but I start seeing a light, okay, that starts moving from like the bottom below my legs, moving up to the top of the bed and back. And when I say that, to me, I could feel the warmth with this light. I mean, it wasn't like burning or nothing, but it was just a warmer than what the general table was warm itself, but that was warmer. Okay. And it, to me, I've only seen a copy machine that does that. At least that light moving up and down like that. So, so these guys come around, these blue cats, and they've got these wands. The wands, the fiber optics on them start moving more when they're moving. They're like waving them around me. I want to tell you, understand, they did not touch me with these things, okay? They wave it by, and I'm feeling this light. I can see it when I look down. I can see it moving, from the bed, from the part I can see my arm down. And so I start asking telepathically, what are y'all doing? Are you copying me? That's what it kind of felt like, at least from the machinery that I know, okay? And I start picking up, no, we're awakening additional light quanta. I never heard that word before. Light quanta of your DNA because you don't believe in yourself. That's what they said, and you're not awake enough. And first I started hitting the back. I said, I am awake. I'm very awake. I've always been awake my whole life. I can't stop my mind from going 1,000 effing miles an hour. You understand? It's always been like that. And so stopping internal dialogue for me was very, very difficult. I had to learn some pranayama and figure out how to actually use the breath to still the mind a little bit. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. I'm talking to myself constantly. My mind is racing thousands of concepts, all the stuff all at once, all the time. Anyway, so they say that, and they say I wasn't awake enough. That's why I'm picking up telepathically, because I didn't believe in myself. And they found that painful. That's what was being communicated to me. They found it painful. And, little would I reveal to people, when I was younger, I had a self-confidence problem. And it's amazing because nobody ever picked up on it. When I tell people that now, they say they can't believe that's true. But I used to have a self-confidence problem. And it's not self-esteem. I know my self-esteem, my worth, who I am, where I'm from. But self-confidence is sometimes, do you have what it takes to tackle the task at hand? Okay, that's different. That's even different from self-efficacy. So I had some issues with that, and that's what they were referring to. All right, and one day I was going to get jacked and have to start talking about this stuff. I was unprepared for that too, but that was all in the works apparently. So anyway, that's what was going on with these beings doing that. So they never felt me. The light that was coming from them, it felt very soothing. I will say that though, and like I said, it was not it wasn't an abrasive thing. But then I've got questions. So I start picking up information, when they said Andromeda Council, I want to know more. And they start immediately, information starts coming to me. Sorry. And what I'm picking up from this whole experience is that these beings, like I said, I do not believe Mana is from Andromeda, but I believe the other beings in this illustration are. Okay. They're showing me like a sparm, like a spiral arm, then the Andromeda Galaxy is spiral. I've got pictures of that too. I'm not going to bother pulling it up. They're showing me like at the bottom, at the edge of one of these spiral arms is where they're from. And then dig this, okay? And folks, this is nothing I'm just making up. I've been talking this same crap since 2014. Go back to everything I said. Nothing's different. All right. I figured more out now, even since then. But they're relaying to me, and they're showing me images of what I thought, and my brain is terming Magellanic clouds. Okay. And then they're showing me that these Magellanic clouds are actually portals for that area of space where they're at. And they're showing me how there's an entry point into these Magellanic clouds that they go into, and then can emerge. One of the exiting points of this is an aperture that comes out just outside of Jupiter in our solar system. And they're telling me how they can use ships to go there, or some of them that can just do the shifting of the energy body into a orb or whatever they want to use for intergalactic travel, can just go into that Magellanic cloud and then go through. Okay, hold on. Let me correct something, okay? What I found out, what I can add to that now, is that the Magellanic clouds that I thought they're terming that would actually be what we call Kordylewski clouds. And anyone that watched my previous live a few weeks ago on plasma knows what I'm talking about. So what they're showing me are these clouds that, if you scientifically look up right now, are called dusty complex plasmas. Again, is this a Barry Littleton just being weird? Well, maybe. No, sir. Sorry. 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 Dusty complex plasmas. That is the term for the Kordylewski clouds, okay? And how they might be alive and things like that. So what they were showing me were not Magellanic clouds. Magellanic clouds are actually galaxies themselves, okay? It was some type of huge Kordylewski clouds, plasma, intelligent plasma that can be used for portals too. And one of them has an exit for our solar system outside of Jupiter. So when I listen to other contactees talking, and one of them, excuse me, one of them would be Tony Rodriguez. And Jessica, you're in the chat, so it would have been the one we were at, the Cocoa Beach one. You weren't there, so it was the one in Grafton. And he was doing this talk, and I got to catch that one. We weren't talking close to each other that time. So I caught it, and he started saying how there was this portal outside of Jupiter, and how these people that are enslaving us and other civilizations were using that. And look, there's no way he could have known that unless he was in contact with some type of beings, or something's happened to that dude, because that's how I knew about it. It doesn't matter. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about the experience itself and the knowledge that came out of it. So there's something real there, okay, about this portal outside. And I imagine if it's like the neural network, I believe it is, I'm sure there's several probably plasma Kordylewski clouds that connect to that portal. It's just a matter of how to manipulate it. I think that's serious information, everybody, because these are things that our science is showing now beyond me just talking or Tony just talking. These are things that can be verified with scientific evidence now. And it's only going to go further from there, about how these Kordylewski clouds are most likely sentient beings. And I've tried to identify in the Uranta book and in the Keys of Enoch exactly what type of sentient beings they might be. Okay. So anyway, so that's what happened during this experience. Okay. And it was enlightening in that way. But they were making references how a lot of them come in ships through the clouds there, through that portal, even though they don't have to at their level of stage of development. But again, the density in this solar system is heavy. And the density on Earth, I think, is triple that. Okay, so these beings can get stuck and not have the ability to go back through those clouds and get back home, or whatever method that they're using. So a lot of them will stay on board those crafts to avoid what I talked about in the other experience, the M&M effect, microwaves and metals in our atmosphere. Okay, the contaminants that are microbiology, microbes, all that stuff very deadly for beings from another biosphere, for real. Okay, anyway, so that's this experience, and what I wanted to throw out from there. And now I'm gonna look at this. Okay, it's so interesting, because at first, I wondered what had happened to me, because the further I got away after the experience and wasn't in the presence of these beings, the harder it starts being to remember what actually happened. And the longer time goes, the worse it gets. Not better, unless you're really, really working at it. You know what I mean? And eventually it can come to having to do the hypnosis to just home in on the things that that happened, and to get the information that might have been communicated on the superconscious level. That's very, very important. All right. Something else I'll show real quick. Just do a quick comparison of something. All right. I think this is worth talking about. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. And I've had people ask me in the past if this bed reminded me of this. And I know I've heard about med beds. That's a real big deal right now. I know. And this is, I don't believe what I was on was exactly a med bed. I think it was something more advanced than that. But people have asked if I thought that it was similar to this. And that would be that the God of John, God of John bed from that dude in Brazil. And I admit, I think it's an interesting contraption. All right, I've actually sat in one at the metaphysical fair. In fact, there's one going on in my town right now. But it's a metaphysical fair, and these people came in from another state, and they brought a few of these things, different models of this John of God bed. And they were so eager for me to try it. They were like, man, just to sit in one. So I sat in one for like 30 minutes or something. All right. I didn't have the great experience that my friend that was sitting in one of them. They said that they thought they went through a portal when they were in one. I didn't have the the same experience. But when looking at the technology that is this bed, like I find it is some things interesting. But anyway, let me share this other one before I talk too much out of what I'm trying to say. I'm starting to get excited. When that happens, I start getting sidetracked. I see it happens to me on Jessica's show all the time. I get too excited. And next thing I know, I'm taking us somewhere we shouldn't even be talking about. I think if it was the Apollo, people would be throwing carrots at me. Anyway, okay, again, this is this is that John of God bed, okay? And I find it interesting some of the components that they have that are underneath the bed there. So I'm showing this one. And when I sat underneath that thing, I didn't feel shit. Okay, I felt a little bit of energy going on, but it wasn't that. It was a little stimulating, a little relaxing, but it wasn't that major. I didn't feel like it was healing me of any ailments or anything like that. Look, everybody, I'm not saying that they don't, but that's not what I got when I was laying under that thing. It was really cool to see the little cool lights going through the crystals and feel what's going on. And it was quite enjoyable. The whole Star Trek feel to it, that was very enjoyable. But I didn't feel like it was doing something massive like with the bed I was on in this bio bed thing, okay? Doesn't mean it's not, it just didn't feel that way. But people have just kind of asked if what I felt was going on was similar to this, and I can say, no, not really. It's not what I found in there. Are those pretty cool? Yeah. Can I say what their value is? No, it's not for me to judge. Some people said they've been healed by these things. They may have. It's dealing with the light spectrum, okay? So I'm not going to clown it, but it just wasn't the same when I had experience there. All right. Okay. Going forward just a little bit more. Okay. So I've told you about the beings that I'd experienced there, and during that experience itself. So that's out of the way. Now let's talk about some of the other beings that others have told me about that they've dealt with from Andromeda. Okay. It's a big place, like I had said. One would be, let's see. Well, I'll just say, there's some I've seen other blue beings have been represented. I've been seen some humanoids represented, okay, and others that look like this. And I will use this illustration because it goes in our entertainment. There's another species there that some of you know who I'll be referring to. Somebody I used to work with that got upset about the fact that I talk about going into the light when you are deceased, and we never had it out or anything. We never spoke again since then. And they said I was working with the cabal. So, but anyway, they claimed, I put emphasis on that, to have experience with beings from Andromedan that were females, melanin dominant black females that were androgynous with dreadlocks. And it wasn't just that individual I'm talking about. There was many in their community that were saying that before them. Okay. And they claimed to have content. These women are supposed to be represented. They're warriors, and they're supposed to be represented in our entertainment industry. One would be Guinan, okay, who had dreadlocks. I didn't even need to show y'all no picture of Guinan. You know who that is. Oh, Goldberg, Whoopi. Okay, that's one example. Another would be Wonder Woman. Okay, and when I say that, Wonder Woman came from the island of Thera, and we'll use a comparison on that in just a moment. All right, but I've talked to some other people, and these women are supposed to be androgynous, and they're supposed to be about 7-8 feet tall, very muscular and things. And I've mentioned to y'all before. Look, I don't know the brother, but there was that brother named of like 18 Signs of Astrology. He was real popular when I had first come forward, and he had some good information, but he disappeared for a while. I remember everybody asking, what happened to him? What happened to him? When he showed back up, he had on these glasses, these big old glasses, and he said that he got kidnapped by these Andromedan women, these warriors. And he claimed that they tied him up and they tortured him. So they beat his ass, beat him down. And then he takes off them glasses and he's got like this big black eye, like, pow. He was like crying, saying, they hurt me. I couldn't do anything. And then I got another example of somebody I knew that said that their husband got assaulted by these women. Okay. Anyway, and there's supposed to be some ties between them and supposedly the Queen of Sheba also. Okay. So anyway, that's the example of these beings. I don't mean to laugh at 18 Signs of Astrology, but I'm gonna tell you what it reminded me of. I did kind of when it happened, because if you're my age, okay, Mike Tyson was the man at one point, all right? And he fought a dude, I never forget the dude's name because his first name is the same as my brother's, Mitch Blood Green. He beat down Blood Green to the ring, okay? He was one of those knockout dudes. And Blood Green said that he's seen him like at a club in Boulder or Denver, Colorado, and he tried to jump Tyson, tried to rush him or something, and Tyson popped him one. And he's going, then he punched me, and he jumped, he started shaking his hand like a little sissy, and he jumped in his limo and took off, you know. And he's sitting up doing this interview with these big old black glasses. I mean, like James Belushi, big old glasses on. And they were like, Blood Green, show us your eyes. And he took off those glasses. And I mean, excuse me, that eye was just like, wow. It was just hold down. I mean, that brother had a black eye, like one of the ones you have to take a stake on, like in the Brady Bunch, they take a stake and put it on the black eye, man. It was black eye like that. So I feel for both of them, okay? But anyway, that's the Andromeda females and how they're represented in our entertainment quite a bit. This picture I brought up here is from The Living Dead. What's her real name? Danny Henderson, I think is her name, the actress, because she's on Black Panther also. Excuse me. Anyway, but I brought that up because what? Michonne has the dreadlocks. She's a samurai. She's got the sword. She's representative of these women also. Okay, so that is something I just want to bring that up. And also another species from Andromeda I've heard about that are similar to these, but they have an insectoid hybrid to them also. And that's represented by the Predator. When you see the Predator in the movies, that the Predator has got the dreads. They're actually a part of their breathing system too, if you look that up. The Yatajun, or whatever they're called. Anyway, that's a part of their breathing deal. And if you also look up Stan Winston's first sketches of the Predator, look at the mandibles. It's actually insectoid. The predators, I think, got a great deal of insectoid, and we think reptilian because of the hands and the feet we see. But if you look at those mandibles, those are insectoid. Okay, so anyway, that's another representative of how one of these Andromedan species is in our entertainment. And while I'm talking about that, I want to say something else. I'm part of a group that I actually attended one yesterday and had Dr. Mootney was talking from Africa, South Africa. Charlie Jones and his mother, Catherine Jones, they run a group that's part of the John Mack Institute, and it's Experiencers of Color. So some of you that might be interested, let me know, let Charlie know or something. And room for more people to be in the group, I think, is maybe important. He's done a really good job, and it's cool. Anybody wants to get out things that are more of the melanin dominant contact experience. It's not talked about enough. I've been saying that since 2014. It's changing, but it needs to change more if we're going to be a type 1 civilization. Because right now, from the information that I've gotten through the work I've done with Jessica, through the research on the problem that our galaxy has with slavery. And if you look in this book here specifically, okay, and I it's so neo-Christian that some of that turns me off a lot, but it does deal with the concept that this particular constellation we live in, they call it Satania, based on that name of one of those beings, okay, and the beings that comes here a lot. They call it the Satania because it has a problem. It's the rebellion of the divine against the divine field. And I'm sorry, but I'm seeing that when they say the Milky Way has a problem with slavery. That's been pretty much proven through the work with Jessica. So these things with that being aware of not just melanin dominant contactees, but melanin dominant extraterrestrials, blending all that together is a part of us becoming a type 1 civilization. Yes, we're not still over all that, all right? We still have a problem with that on this planet, let alone dealing with a species like Sasquatch or another species that's from another, maybe even another galaxy, let alone another dimension, another frequency. We've got to be aware of these things, okay, as we go forward. And I think it's important. And the first way of that is just brings people's attention to it. It's not about harping on it. It's not about blaming anybody. It's about going forward. That's why I spoke out. I put my head on the chopping block for that reason, okay? I never tell nobody any of this stuff because it makes you seem crazy, all sorts of other stuff. But there's too many people like me and way more than me that have more experiences, more knowledge than me that need to come forward. Okay, certainly not the Barry Show. You got a bunch of people know a lot more than me, way heavier than me, and have experiences way heavier than mine. So, but all together, we come together and make this tapestry. All right, enough of me speeching. Enough of my speeches. Let's go forward just a little bit more here, okay? I'm almost done with all the illustrations, everybody. Don't worry. Here we're gonna talk about this. Okay, and what this is a representation, and I'll tell you why I'm interested in it also. Oh, sorry, a little slow there. Here it comes. This right here. And the reason I have an interest in this, that first experience that I had where I saw the morphing organic UFO that I was aboard, and how I mentioned at the end, this thing was a saucer, and then it changed in the ship in the sky to this crystalline bipyramidal Merkaba. While I was watching this other one appeared and came up, and it was a golden ball. And that's why I think it's important to pull this out. And it was, when I say that, it was just spherical, but it was very bright. And it's something she started watching, the person that was with me. And they become mesmerized by this thing. And I was mesmerized with what I saw, so I can't talk, all right? Okay, I'm not pointing any sticks. But it was later after that we looked over and see a couple of these things over the city beaming light down. Okay, but the reason that I'm interested in this is because hers was spherical, the one she was really in tune with. And this is just an illustration of one of those spherical craft that have been seen around. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because when you start looking, like I said, tell everybody before, I'm always looking for connections and similarities, okay? And here is one. Oh. One day, I swear to you, I'll get even faster with this, but it's better than it was. Barely. Right here. Okay, right here. This is something that came up, and I believe this is from that gentleman, Sheldon Needle. And some of his stuff is good, I think. Some of it is a little far out. Some of it is completely devoid of any type of melanin dominant creatures or any type of ethnic extraterrestrials whatsoever. They look like those. Everybody looks like the Ashtar Command. Everybody's Fabio. Everybody's Kevin Sorbo. Christy Brinkley. You know, I mean, that's not. Nonetheless, let me get off that, yo, so everybody gets mad. So let me get off that. Okay, this is an example of what he calls one of these mother Andromedan ships, though. Okay, from the Andromeda Council. And so I'm paying attention to people say they're involved with these beings with that name because I got that name thrown at me. And most of these beings never give me names. Excuse me. Anyway, just some interesting things about that and about how it kind of laid out there, all right, as a spear. And that's a large one. I think it's a cool representation of what may actually be something that's real and type of craft that we've seen. So that's just the Andromedan, potential Andromeda technology I wanted to just show. And there's one more I'll just throw up with it too. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. And like I said, these are things, like I said, I'm always looking for comparisons between contactees and just similarities, you know, some things that just might be somewhere there. All right, another one. And this is from that Veritas website, used to be up. But nonetheless, it's another one of these examples. And, you know, I could be wrong. I don't want to get in trouble because I think this was yeah, there it is. It was the Ashtar Command thing. And look, y'all, look, I'll be admit, I always laughed about the Ashtar. It doesn't mean people are not encountering that, all right? But it's just so culturally one-sided. And as a human race, we can't view everything in that way from anybody's race, anybody's cultural perspective only. And when it comes to the Ashtar, I mean, sorry, but it's kind of one-sided. But anyway, never mind all that. This is one of the several type of large motherships and legion ships that those people have described that are quite interesting. And I found this one interesting because it has somewhat of an Andromedan spherical shape. Okay, so sorry, I'm not trying to piss nobody off. There could be somebody that's in contact with the Ashtar Command in my group here, so I'm not trying to assault anyone. All right, not apologize that ticks somebody off. I'm not here to upset people, but sometimes it's just the stuff I see. I can't help but keep my mouth shut or say something about it. Okay, anyway, okay, going back to the Andromedan females. Okay, I'm going to bring something else up, and I think it's worthy for those of you that have seen this material. And I'm going to make a correlation. Sorry, I should have did this earlier, everybody. I apologize, but you'll still be with me, I'm sure, on this. When dealing with these Andromeda females that are androgynous, as supposedly the women of Thera were, okay? This is a book by, I don't know if it's Michael or Michel Desmarquet. He's a male, though. He wrote another book called Journey to the Ninth Planet. And this got very popular amongst melanin-dominant contactees because he talked about there being melanin-dominant extraterrestrials in the Centaurus constellation. Okay? And when talking about that, so it's a decent read, okay? I have a problem with the amount of time he said he was off planet. I'm not sure I buy it. But hey, it's all right. You know, I mean, he's still got some good information, and it's not for me to judge his experiences. But going back to something else I want to show and why I'm bringing him up. Okay. Oh, sorry. There it is. Sorry, that one I didn't have pull up, but I'll get it right here. You'll get it. Okay, the reason why I'm bringing up Michael and Michelle, whatever this is called Desmarquet. He experienced, when going to Centaurus, these beings. And that's in the Thanabi prophecy, and he calls them Bacteranians. Bakaratinians. Okay, and he says that this was what he thought at first was a ship full of nothing but women. Okay, and as they get going to this planet they're going to, and he's communicating, interacting with them for however long this is, and he finally started asking them, you know, do you have any males in your species? Where are the males? Are there any males? And the being tells him, there are no females here. Or no, I'm sorry. He asks, is your whole planet female? And they said, there are no females here. And when it comes to, he starts examining them more right then, noticing that some of these quote unquote women might have like an Adam's apple, or their shoulders are broad, and they have some male characteristics. And they said they were androgynous. They were androgynous, okay? And that's how they existed. And that's supposed to be the way that the Wonder Woman's people are supposed to be. And the reason why I'm bringing up these particular beings is because it's said about these Andromedan females, they're similar, that they're androgynous also, like the species that Des Marquet met, the Bacteranians, right? So I think it's just worthy. And, like I said, this is, I enjoy trying to pull similarities together, not just between myself, but between contactees. I think that's how we really start discovering some maybe fundamental truths somehow. You know what I mean? So, there's one last thing we go over, and then I'm going to talk to the audience a little bit, all right, to the people, and see what all you think. There's one other thing I'm going to go over. Let me see. Just so I'm going to pull this up just to show you a picture, so I have to pull another picture up. It's just too much. All right. This craft right here, we've already talked about it quite a bit. The morphing organic UFO, okay? I've talked about this craft a lot. I'm fond of it, obviously. This is the one that also morphed into a tri-pyramidal Merkaba, which looks like three of these things. You all saw that later, or another video I've done, or I showed it earlier. Anyway, point being, when it was still in this form, okay, it's got this thing on top. And the information I have picked up is that it's an emitter. A directional, like a field emitter. Okay, and I've said what it does before. What it does was, one is, I think it throws a wave of plasma to open up a mako, a vortex, and also this thing was turning and like tuning me in. Woo, woo, woo. And so I know it was tuning into my brain waves. And we've talked about how the makos operate on conscious waves that are like brain waves. Okay, and that's scientifically discovered by Dr. Shields. It's not just me talking. That's where the data is taking us, okay? Reason why I'm showing you this is for, where is it? Oh, bear with me. For this reason right here. And this is something that came up, and I know that they had to have got this the same way I got it, from beings. There's just no other way, I'm sorry. And this one was this Sheldon Needle? Oh gosh, I think so. But when I saw this, and this is going back years and years ago, I knew that they knew. There you go. And this is from, Sheldon Needle is right. His name's down there. Okay, this is quite similar. And he calls it a directional emitter, opposed to what I was told, which is a field emitter. But he's got some things right. The information I had got is, okay, they can use this as a plasma. We know how much we're going into plasma now to open up a mako, a black hole, to go through things. Okay, he's got that pretty much right there. If you see, propulsion system creates a plasma beam upon which the ship rides. It also produces a plasma field which ties all elements into the ship in the same inertial-less field, which is, okay, gravity modification, which I know everybody's into right now. I'm not as interested in gravity modification sometimes as I am how their societies actually run and the efficiency of that. Anyway, point back, you can read everything for yourself. He's got a field generator there. Very similar, I do believe, to what I saw. It may not be exact, but it's quite similar to what I just showed you on this other thing. So therefore, it makes me always really pay attention to craft and pictures of craft that I see that have a directional field emitter on top. Let's take a look at a few, okay? And then we'll go to talk to everybody real quick and just see what everybody has to say and everything. This one was something that was found in Poland, seen in Poland, and I believe it's a couple of different crafts, but they all have that directional field emitter on top. So I think it's important to see. Boom. Okay, here you go. You can see that field emitter on top. Let me see if I've got one other picture too that is, there's one that is called the picture of South France, the UFO of South France, and it's got a huge directional emitter on top. So I knew there was no doubt that I was seeing something that was absolutely true. In fact, I've got that one pulled up, I believe. Yeah, I do. I'll show it to you. Yeah, I'll probably be the last one, everybody. Bear with me. Oh. Actually, there'll be one more picture after this, then I'll be done. Sorry, folks. Right here. This is the UFO over France. And God, what year was it? 1960 something, 64? Sorry, you can look it up though. But thing is, look at that. You know, I've always known this was a real picture. And you see it's got the directional emitter on top, okay? And also, I want you to, a couple of things to notice, that I know this is a real ship also, because look at the black void on the picture on the left bottom, okay? And I've mentioned before how this prana, this life energy that they use, of plasma, that's all tied in, but when they actually generating that, it has a negative emulsion, those have negative emulsion on film from back in that day. So you see that void like that. If you look at the one to the right, look at it. It's either releasing something on the left or something is happening as in they're releasing field or gravity modification field to go around the craft to make a jump into a Mako. So that's just something that's really interesting, I think, about that. But as far as those ships, I look at for crafts like that, older craft, older pictures. I look for things like that. Okay, like again, I said, looking for similarities. Sorry, folks. One more picture I got, and we'll be done. I'm sorry, two more. I mentioned to you earlier crystallography, and I didn't bring up the picture, so I'll just show it to you real quick. And these are things I like I said, I do these so people can look up their own information. It really doesn't matter what I say. I might be a quack, I might be cooked, I might be negative, who knows, so do your own research. I could just be off, but I'm not. Anyway, but this is what is crystallography. You can look that up, and they're different types. They're different types of crystallography. But this is just to take you in that general way. And I know that's what a lot of these beings are using. And it's what it is it's the basis of actually manipulating the structure of the crystal itself. And that takes us into things like, things like quasi crystals, and also photonic crystals. Those are things to look at to see where we're going as far as future information goes. And I had mentioned to you before natural light. Okay, so I got a picture of natural light, and that's the last one I'm going to show. Natural light, again, that's dealing with quasi-crystallography too. And I look for things that are natural specimens that will look somewhat similar to what those beings were holding. Boom, right there is natural light. Okay, so you see how those things coming out, if you were to make them a little more organic, almost to the fiber optic component with them, that's what I believe we were dealing with. As far as what the blue Andromeda beings were holding, okay? Quite beautiful, isn't it? So I think that's our future right here. Ooh, all right. There, got it all. That's most of it. So that's just the experience I wanted to share with everybody. The parts of it that are maybe more intricate and the details, and you can take it from there, maybe help scientifically, whatever the case is. I know I'm supposed to talk about it. Real quick, go over here. Appreciate everybody being here. Sorry I don't look over into the chat much when I'm talking, but I get excited and I start looking over and I start talking about this weird stuff and I start losing track of what I'm talking about. You know how much that sucks. Allison, what's going on? Why do you want to cuddle the little blue beings? Oh yeah, I can do this. I forgot. What's up, Allison? Somebody had mentioned something. My friend Yolanda, she's come over to this platform, hangs out sometimes. You're as much welcome. We met at a conference. Super cool woman there. She had asked, so what happens if these beings would just have taken you and never brought you back? You know, that one is, I can say I wouldn't have survived. In the environments I've been on board those craft, that's wouldn't survive long. That's a major issue there. So I don't think they wish to exterminate my life force. It was not that. Number two, I think they had no interest in that. But if it was a negative encounter, that's different. I might not have any choice, you know? Or if you're one of those people that's given a choice and you say the hell with this place and you never seen again. I'm just saying, I know a lot of people would say right now, what is it in Spaceballs? Remember when the at the very end, when the alien, the xenomorph starts doing the song, going across the deck, you know, with the hat and everything, baby, baby, and it takes off and they're all like, waiter, check please. I think you would do that when you came to just space dock here. You wouldn't even beam down here, man. You could be check please. You're gonna leave at 10 forward. You're not even gonna come down here. Anyway, I always remember Land of the Lost with the crystals and the pylon structures. That's right. Yeah, that's right. There were crystals in there where the Slee Stack had control of them underground. Yeah, right. I remember a bunch of like mist being around the crystals. So that's very interesting, you know. When crystals and ship propulsion, it comes up frequently. For Star Trek, it's the dilithium crystals. What is the other one? There's another show that they use to like Ventura crystals. That comes up in Doctor Who. The TARDIS doesn't run on that, but they've come across these species that do. You know, I was watching a clip from Babylon 5, which, to be honest, I'm sorry to say, is not a show I watched, okay? But it was very interesting in terms of they were talking about the different type of organic craft that they were discovering. Organic craft that was almost encased in a way that you could consider a Dyson sphere being encased here. And when I say Dyson sphere, we start dealing with these civilizations that are going into miniature, and what we can do now, miniature, and you think of how much we could put into not a flash drive, but a microchip right now, how much information, and they're getting even better with that. How will they be with that in 15, 20 years? And then expand that concept into a Dyson sphere. You've got so much inner universe that it would be completely unreal. Any civilizations that made a real Dyson sphere, especially when you look at the way we're going with artificial intelligence. And I'm getting really, really curious now, because this is something that's always been there. And they're even realizing that the Kordylewski clouds I spoke about earlier might be functioning of what they call, we're at qubit now, a qubit, which is slightly more intense in terms of its computational for quantum computers. A little beyond my level, but I was reading about it. So that there is, you've got these Kordylewski clouds that might be sentient, and they're also getting bombarded by solar wind. And who knows, the ones in Andromeda, what type of solar wind they're getting bombarded by. It might not be a yellow sun like ours. What if it's a red dwarf? Or what's the supergiant? They're going to be getting bombarded by so much solar wind and radiation. Those clouds, as omnipotent beings, might be beyond computational comprehension. Anyway, sorry, I'll go up just a little bit. Conductors of electricity. So I'm kind of going up reverse here just a little bit. It's very cool. I appreciate everybody being here. Crystals, right on. Let's see. Let's make the can appear as light in a circular shape when form a light weapon difference. You know what? You've got some of these craft that use condensed. They're made actually composed of condensed light, so they can shape, and morph by that alone. And that's also a part of plasma. So when you start dealing with living beings that are plasma, that might be craft also, and a matter of fact that plasma can come together and create its own intelligence. They're showing that right now, especially if you look up I think it's Kawana spears, Kuwana spears. It's a way that the actual plasma can like create these sheaths over each other, and the plasmoids themselves that can be cold, different solid, gas. The plasmoid can be several different types in one sheath. So that kind of changes things a lot when dealing with living creatures. So good call on that. So I'm just going up a little bit here. Oh. Oh no, not the update. Not doing that right now. Bob Lazar talked about that. Sorry, not sure which parts you're talking about there. I'm going back. But something that I thought that was interesting about him is when he talked about how the craft would actually turn to the side and then enter the wormhole, the Mako, like that, in the anti-gravity or the gravity modification. It would turn like belly up and enter that way. That's not what I've seen a lot of other crafts doing that are actually using the Makos. That doesn't mean that they don't. I've been seeing a few illustrations of ships going in out of Makos people say they've seen, but pay close attention to when you've got the two lights that are there. First, there's just one light, then there's two, then there's one, and that one's gone. It's because they've actually made the frequency jump. And when they're doing that, we've talked about that quantum hologram that appears before you go through the vortex. Okay, that perfect copy that's on the top of the Mako. That's the Mako, the magnetically turning collapsing objects. The Mako is the mechanism that actually holds the information. So you get that quantum hologram on the surface, which is that other ship you've seen. There's just one there, then there's two, then there's one, then that one's gone. That second one is just a quantum hologram. Okay, well, the ship's already gone. That's important to kind of check out in some of these things, but we're dealing with different types of warp propulsion, different types of, interdimensional transport. There are different types of it, and I think many we've not even discovered yet. But what Bob Lazar saw was very interesting, but I think it's one of the more lower civilizations that are making deals with us here. You know what I mean? And I wonder how much of that was not just absolutely staged. And I'll say something else about Bob Lazar's information. Excuse me. I think it's very interesting when you correlate the ship, the way he describes it and draws it, compared to those metal fragments that were sent from Billy Myers to Marcel Vogel, and the way that they actually were tested under microscopy. Okay, very interesting when you get there, and that showed cold fusion. And I wonder if those pieces that were sent to Marcel didn't come from one of those craft that Billy was working on, or Lazar was working on, excuse me. So just food for thought. I don't know, but it's interesting to see some of the things that are real. I met a gentleman named Dan Willis, very accomplished, and we were on this panel, and I asked him during the panel. He said he did a lot of work with Marcel Vogel, and I said, "You ever see those pieces he was sent?" And he said, "Yeah." He said he held some of them. He said, "Man, there's definitely signs of cold fusion there, something we can't do yet." Anyway, again, food for thought. Oh, sorry, I keep getting tied up here. Does that mean they can reproduce themselves? Colleen, do you mean the craft? Yes, yes. Bring something up here. Okay. Sorry, it's just so much to bring some of these up, but just it's something I've addressed in another live. Okay. It's a room I was in. I guess I might as well sure brought it up. To save time, I can just bring up a picture of it. It doesn't matter. It's all about education, right, and learning. And I can only tell you what I've learned. Oh, there it is. Oh, wow. Just as I say that, there it is. Okay, right here. It's this room that I told you before. It's the bio. Sorry, I call it the anti-gravity room. All right. Oh, sorry. But the truth is, all right, that this thing was, the room was very, very big. Oh, that's weird. Okay, there it is. Sorry. All right. Anyway, this room was very, very big. I've tried to say before how it was much bigger than what this illustration shows. This was almost like a cargo bay. I mean, I could see how if they were quote unquote doing an abduction, how that could actually put a car in there. But what I also think it is a place that's on the belly of this craft, which is the morphing organic craft I showed you, that was capable of also producing another being, another ship inside this space. And when you start dealing with this, you start dealing with other civilizations that are working together to consciously manifest parts of these craft. So they'll all be working together, some of them which might be on the microbial level, working together in the belly of this craft to materialize them, all right, to bring other life forms, a type of reproduction process that we're not fully familiar with for space organisms. You know, there's a video that I've done, and it's on my channel, or that I don't know that I ever made actually public. But if you go back and look on when I was talking about with Jessica, I had Jessica actually remote view this. So I put that video up on her channel and on mine. If you go to interviews, go to remote viewing. I had gave her the task of looking up what's called the lenticular spacecraft. And that's supposed to be the spacecraft that's between Earth and the moon that is taking people at night and training them and doing stuff with them. All right. Supposed to be a very positive thing. And I had questions if it might possibly even be the Kordylewski clouds, because they're in a similar place. And was that what the lenticular craft was? But anyway, during that video, it's very well done. It's out of Romania, but they talk about in the belly of some crafts of that craft, other ships being designed and being made. See, I've known that too because they've told me that, but I didn't find it out on that thing. But just the similarities, like I said, I never heard anybody talking about how some of these biological ships can reproduce and what they do and how they do it. You know, is it voluntarily? Is it asexual? What is it? You know what I mean? So that's just something to go on there. But I know sometimes when you have correlations and associations, other beings will come together to help actually manifest and birth a craft in the belly of another one like that. So I think that's a room that could do that. That's my answer to that question. Sorry it took so long. Good question, though. Great question. I appreciate everybody being here. Very cool. And just talking, hanging out. You know, Jessica actually brought to my attention, she said, Barry, you know, you've got a following of your own. She said, you never say that or talk like that. Well, I don't view it that way because you know why? I've always been on other people's platforms most of the time. I've been on a bunch of them, a lot of them. And so I always think that it's other people's audience. I don't think there's actually people following me. So I apologize for that. And I want to acknowledge everybody that does. It's just kind of new to me because, believe me, I didn't think anybody would ever listen to me. And the fact I've ever been invited to one of those damn conferences blew me away. Every one of those I ever went to, I was blown away. I know what people want me to talk about half the time. You know what I mean? But it's always cool to meet people and meet like-minded and just kind of fit in and get more information. Interesting. You know, blinding blue white light. You know, Eastern Broker 2026. You know, that's similar. You know, what effects did your brother have after that? You know, Travis Walton, you know, he kind of changed some of his information at a point or learned more, I guess. But, you know, he said at first later it wasn't an abduction as those beings were saving his life because he got zapped by that light. And that light, like it stopped his heart or something he said. So they were actually saving his life when they brought him on board that craft. And for that reason, Jimmy Church wanted him and I to get together on one of his Fade to Black shows and talk based on these Caucasians I saw in the blue suits. And so when I looked deeper into it, I guess Travis said that human he saw on board that craft had on a tight blue suit too. But that's what made me pay attention to George Dembski. Once I had to come eat a little crow, that I've actually encountered some of these Nordics. But that makes you wonder. And what Adamski said, those cats are from Venus. But I think the ones I encountered, like I said, I think they're time commissioners, time officers. That's what I think they are, or historians is a better word, excuse me. And that they're using those craft and the things that we call now the chronovisor to actually record history. So, you created the predator? Okay, right on. Everybody's kind of talking amongst themselves, so I guess I'll go down to the end here. I wouldn't go to Mexico pretend to have had experience with UFOs or aliens. Something different to them would be. It's different for everybody. We've got positive encounters and negative. But what I can tell you from talking to the gentleman from the John Mack Institute that does the support group, and even more importantly, all the work done by Ray Hernandez, the CCRI, not the book I have in here, but the one like UFOs, the first one. The majority of contact scenarios is positive. The majority of contact is positive, but through the media, we don't hear that. And through those that are narrative gatekeepers, which are around right now, trying to keep and change the contact narrative to something that is negative or things that's really neuroprogramming and things that can be proven by Nexus, mind Nexus. I advise everybody, please go back for a few days ago and listen to the show that Jessica and I did with Desiree Foley on her remote viewing show. It's, I think, one of the best ones we've done. Excellent information. So Jessica, if you're still in there, please link everybody if you could. If not, it was just a few days ago. It's a really good one. She works for Mind Nexus. She talks about the non-linear junction detection scans along with other frequency counter scans, how they're tracing that back to certain corporations, how they're removing some implants, biosensors, and semiconductors, although she won't call them there. She's call them that. She said she can't. But that's what they're doing. That's real. That's stuff that can be proven scientifically, and it's important because we have no neurocognitive law. Okay, so that stuff is real, and people are being targeted. And supposedly, like Jesse Beltran says, we go to 6G, they're going to turn a lot of people on. That's scary as HE double hockey sticks. So anyway, I advise everybody, please go back and check out that show. I know it's not a popular topic with some, but the science is important. The data is important. It's way beyond me, beyond it is what it is. It's a fact. I think it's being hidden from us. Sorry, I'm just going down to the end. Everybody's talking so cool amongst yourself. I don't want to dive in everybody's topic too much, but I'm going down 417. I just enjoy that. Enjoyed interacting with you all. That's why I got criticized. You should go back and talk to people in the chat. Why not? I think that's the fun of it. It's not all about me. It's about sharing. Most of the people in here have more experience or more knowledge than me. So might as well share it. You know what I mean? Oh, here's one. Sunfire, Tamara, my friend, what's up? Buried to being use our blueprints of codes and geometry to appear here, and that's why beings are there. Ships look different. That sounds somewhat true. Well, they can use, when you start dealing with, like, for example, when they said they were awakening in that experience, my light quants and my DNA, I would take it that they meant like the non-coded DNA, some of it, which we know is, oddly enough, some of it is bacterial and some of it is viral as well. So when you start dealing with that part of the DNA, they could very well use that for replication of a body too, to make sure that they weren't so accessible to the environmental microbial contaminants here. Okay. And that's what I say from a different body that's not even being done by their technology, and RNA and DNA is being awakened in that way. And since our uncoded DNA is a lot of viral component to it, and it's ingraded in there, they might very well use that for copy bodies that can be more suited for them. And my question too would be, Is that what they're doing in future deals? Now, if you look at that last show I did with Jessica, and it was concerning with and Desiree Foley, the blind targets I gave poor Jessica was who was the who was in control of these companies that have been traced back. These frequencies have been traced back to places like Milsatcom, IBM, Altel, some hospitals, some universities. Who is it that's in control of that whole conglomerate? Who's the prime intelligence? That's what I was wanting her to see, and that's what the target really was. And she kept coming up with information that were like hybrid projects, really advanced ones, and seeing that. And like that was the central location things were going out, that being done because of that project. That's what I got from that data. And she said maybe she wants to do a deeper dive and do another look at it from a different way. But anyway, that's what I got from that. And we start dealing with that and dealing with beings that are maybe non corporeal, whether they be plasma beings, light beings, fallen light beings, or whatever else, dark matter, dark negative mass, whatever they might be. But we start dealing with them that cannot survive in the density of this planet, in the vibration, in the frequency. Okay, that's something else interesting. Something else I want to bring up too. Sorry, y'all. It just came to me. Okay, I'm with it. See, I get information comes through. Somebody didn't mention this. These little blue beings. I mentioned the white stripes on them. Okay, and how they were connected symbiotically to the devices and also to the ship itself. Okay, those suits, pay close attention to those because I think they're quite similar to the suits that Jonathan Reed described that alien having he whacked in the head. The suit that he had on that was it was self defensive and also self-aware and self repairing. I believe the suits that they have on were somewhat similar type of metamaterials. Okay, sorry I forgot that and had to go back to that. Anyway, so I hope that answer your question a little bit when dealing with that, and dealing with the helix complex itself, since we know that also the Makos themselves operate on conscious waves, which occur actually spherical, and we've got within our DNA, we spherical and helical. We've got helical and also spherical as our God, what's called the microbial. Oh gosh, that makes the mirror neuron network. Sorry, I've been talking too long. Anyway, that's similar, so that could be used in that way too. But when you're starting dealing with beings that might want to simulate another planet and trying to find ways that they can actually go forward, going back to that thing with Jessica, what she saw, these people getting experimented on, I coordinated that with the missing 411. When I gave her that as a blind target, what was the origin of that? The true origin of the missing 411, and especially the water deaths too. And she was seeing these labs and these places where people were being held captive, being experimented on. And I'll tell you, it sounded a whole lot like what Credo Mudua had described during his experience of being abducted, including the missing boots and all the things he talked about. But he talked about these beings that were torturing him, calling them Mandingo, and he said everyone on board in that room was being tortured. He saw others. And he said the beings seemed to be getting pleasure from it without smiling, but he felt like pleasure. That makes him think that they come from the future. That's why they're compatible with us. They're from one of those negative timelines. So anyway, that's just bring that up a little bit to answer that question in a very long, strung out way. But when it comes to the DNA and things they're doing, it's quite interesting, especially since they can't manipulate the soul like I think we're being told at all. I think that's something that's thrown around way too easily. Like we just have no control over our soul. So we take it here, there. The work I've done, it doesn't show that. Not saying it can't happen, but it doesn't show that. We're not nearly as weak as all that. Once we incarnate here, they can do all sorts of things to us. But that doesn't go to the superconscious, to the divine over self. They can't mess with that the way they can the other parts of us. That needs to be acknowledged. Much clearer. Micah. You know, I've seen some Micah. That dude Alex, that Nordic gentleman I interacted with on board that craft, he had in what it looked like he had in his hand something like mica, like these 3 or 4 strips of mica. I always laugh and say it looked like a Ferengi would talk about gold-plated light latinum, but it looked like mica to me. And it makes you wonder how much mica has something to do with their technology and how much that might be something found on much more than just Earth. Takes us into metamaterials. Oh, thanks, Jessica. Ah, there you go. Oh, thanks, Jessica. She is still here. Oh, thank you. Lenticular spacecraft. That's a good one. Check that out. Yeah, it's very interesting. That's something a lot of people have said, and on both hers and well, actually, hers is just from her channel on mine. I just copy it over as far as a link. But check out in there, like the first comment should be probably lenticular spacecraft video. It's from my private deal, but it's a good one. Please check it out. It's something that's really hard to find now. Seems like once they put out, it went down for these people in Romania. My pleasure, Colleen. Thank you for being here. Praise you come. Kathleen, thank you for being here. Yep. Yes. Photon crystals are grown. Quasi-crystals are grown in laboratories. Quasi-crystals are almost only grown. And when I've shown things like that huge engine, I've showed you guys many times. Here, this one. So we're dealing not with just plasma, but to me, when I saw the lattices inside of these things, they looked odd. They didn't look like, before it started spinning, they didn't look like natural lattices to me. So that's what made me start looking into quasi-crystals. And I started looking to see if within organic crystal lithography and also quasi-crystals, did they have any that were self-illuminating, that created some type of a bioluminescence? I'm sorry, chemical luminescence in our case. Anything, we don't have anything like that on Earth. So I think where magnetically charged crystals, photonic crystals, quasi-crystals merging together is fascinating. And I think it's combining that with mycelium, I think is where our civilization is going. Birthing more crafts. Yeah, it's it's what we need really consider. And I've also talked about the little beings that attach when you start looking at things like protozoa and some of the space organisms that were found on the windows of like the space station. Start looking at some of them, consider some of them can get bigger and attach to some of these craft the way remoras do to sharks. And I know sometimes some of these ships can catch these things before they go into a mako or when they come out. Some of these things I think are around it, these microorganisms that attach to the craft and start kind of imprinting on it and sucking it like a remora would. And I've done a video on that too. It's in my under space technology and stuff. You'll see it. Space remoras is what I called it. Very cool. You know, I love that book by Melody, Kaleidoscope of Crystals. Do I still have one in here? And I think, since she died, I don't know if these are still in print anymore. These are good books, though. I mean, she gets the vibrational thing on them. So many different aspects of so many crystals and stones and minerals we're familiar with. I really appreciate work like that. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm sorry. Jenny Martinez. What's up, Jenny? You're very supportive. I want to say thank you. You're supportive on my entire YouTube channel, so thank you. You know, that's something, hit me up, barrylittleton13@gmail.com. Do a regression over it. It can be focused on that specifically. Find out what happened. And if you're somebody even like me, you think, I used to go around, I'm Mr. Conscious Experiencer, because I remember so many things I went through during the contact itself. But each time I'm missing 4 or 5 hours of time, what I could remember was a sliver. And then when I go through the hypnosis of it and focus on the deal, I find that so much more was given than I could remember, that I was only remembering a fraction. So in either case, you might not remember anything, but either way, it's worth exploring. And you can do that through hypnosis. I'll be happy to help. BarryLipson13@gmail.com. And I've got at least 3 people I'm going to be responding to tonight too. I'm behind again, but I am doing sessions again and trying to get caught up. Boom. Unreal Estate Broker 2026. Barry, I thought the same. My bro said it made no sound. He was in the house with his cousin and saw it through a window first about a mile away, hovering over rear-wheel trucks. Right on. You know, the ships I've heard, the ones I've been around, they make a sound. It's not all of them, but it's that hum that boom, 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 boom. And I think it's caused by those devices. Some of it, and some of it might be also the generation of the life propulsion energy. You know, but that's cool though. I can appreciate that. Thanks for commenting, man. Oh wow, yeah. White light. That's interesting. Yeah, sound like you might have been out in the country. What's up, Beth? You're one of the people I got to get back to. I'm so sorry I fell off. And we were communicating one day, and I completely fell off and giving you dates. I'm so sorry. I will get with you tonight, definitely. There's something I got to do right after I sign off here, and then I'm gonna try to spend all night answering people, and I get back with you and schedule you in whatever you want. I did not mean to keep you waiting, Beth. I apologize. Oh yeah, he said there was out in the country. Yeah, Atlanta. Huh? You know, it's amazing how much Georgia's been coming up lately. It's fascinating. I'm hearing it a lot lately. Just for various reasons, Georgia just keeps coming up again and again. I was telling Jessica, I was listening to David Pauletti's did a thing over Giants. He did like two of them last week over Giants. And one of them, he was talking about, what is it, Jessica, Mutawa or Tuawa Mounds or whatever you call it. That was just fascinating. He was saying all sorts of stuff about it. And you know what? He's probably right. He probably did have any. That's, you know, and I mentioned before, like Beth, is that Jenny or Beth? Beth, sometimes we may see a ship for just a second. It's flashing and doing some cool stuff, but the amount of information you get downloaded on the superconscious level can be unreal. Okay, it can be real heavy and so fast that it's, you know, flinting. I'm going to be talking about soon about what they call micro dreams. And, you know, micro dreams actually, it means in the frame of like a second, not even 2 seconds, 1 second, you can almost have an entire dream. First, they used to say it's just like flinching images, it's not complete. But now they're thinking you can live a whole lifetime in that second in a dream. So, and then when you start looking at combining that with, excuse me, dream engineering and incubated dream engineering, targeted dream incubation, it takes us to a whole nother level. What they might be able to do to us in the dream state through micro dreams, we're just barely in the twilight of dreaming. We don't have to be an REM to have micro dreams. So food for thought. No, I didn't want to find out. I understand, but it might be beneficial. Like I said, it only takes a second to see something to get all this information downloaded. And then you think nothing really happened. I was looking at it for a second, but on the superconscious level, on a faster frequency, faster vibration, all sorts of information was given, or everybody likes the word downloaded these days. So it's worth for accounting. I understand if you can't take it, though, you can't take it. I understand. Or don't want to, you don't want to. My experience with the black box was I was told that it was gathering. For one, is you have when you're transferring materials from one dimension to another or one universe to another, certain shapes are the way you do that. Certain geometric shapes, and the cube is one of them. So in that way, what they were doing, they were referring to it as an inertial dampener. They're accumulating like the life energy. In this case, like Sorry, I would just try to pull it up, but I don't want to do all that. It takes so long. I found myself going back to my primitive methodology here, but that's all right. Here it is. Wow, thank you, Spirit. In the case of this right here, this is another room. Okay, it's another different ship, different experience. This thing was huge. You've got down here the what looked like C60 or a fullerene, as they're called, which is hexagon, creating this deep golden light that's actually darker than even this color she's got here. But it jets up, and these are decks, and it goes to this huge black box up here. I saw Susan Manwich and Bill Spicer on this show, during this encounter. They're on this deck up here, slightly phased out. Okay, as where I'm getting sick. But what they were telling me that this black box was like, let's say this thing is hovering over water or something, like you see UFOs doing, even over swimming pools. People see them over the swimming pools. They're sucking that prana, that orgone energy out of the water, processing it, storing it, and then taking it to this black box, where as inertial dampener, it's distributing a gravity modification field around the craft, or maybe to other places of the ship that need the power. That's what I've always gotten from that. And what I was told during the event itself, as I was so tripped out on what I was actually seeing. And let's see. And when I say that, it's a ship I've seen quite a bit. Let's say that box is releasing that gravity modification field. I don't want to call it anti-gravity because it's different gravities they're using, okay? But when they do that, I just talked to you about the void that's created under these craft. Here's one there. When they're using that energy, that orgone energy creates a negative effect it has on film emulsions, okay? And right here, you can see where that's starting to be released around this craft. Okay, it hasn't gone all around it yet, but it's starting there. You can see the darkness of it. Eventually engulf it up, and it's going to go through a frequency jump. So that's what the black box is doing. So it's capable of holding life energy, different energies, different types of materials from different universes and different dimensions. So I think that can be taken and also turned to how the cube can hold consciousness. So a lot of people say, oh, I was put in a cube. You know what I mean? Others of us were not. But that's where the cube gets somewhat nebulous, Saturn's cube and all these other things, based on the other technologies we might be using that are strictly more scientific, and something about transferring materials from one dimension to another. That's my very long, drawn out explanation for that. I hope it helps. Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, Jenny. Ah, you mean Jessica? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if you're talking to me, though, I'm guessing. Oh, you are. Thank you. Oh, it's a pleasure working with Jessica. Super fun, super cool. And I hope everybody acknowledges, like, when she did the thing with Desiree and me, you know, I thought that was going to happen a long time. I've just seen it was always going to happen. But it shows how she's willing to deal with both sides. She's been to Montauk. She's got SSP people she's working with, but she's also exploring the other part of it, you know. And we're trying to find the medium ground there, which is the fact that a lot of this is neuroprogramming just to control the narrative of contact, which might potentially be to enslave us as a species. I think that's about as heavy as it gets. So she's helping me uncover that, and I couldn't be more grateful. Starting to kind of wind it down here, but let's see. How did you receive this information? During the experience. I mean, it's right there. You get it. I'm somebody, when stuff's happened to me, I ask. I want to know. I try to take as much in as I can. So that happens, and it seems like the whole experience itself is a learning experience. So, but I hardly know anything about actually truth rather than just synchronicity. I feel like that's the gift. Maybe I don't rely upon strictly on synchronicity, but it helps, you know, especially if the synchronicity is scientific related. When I come across synchronicities, it's normally scientific that backs up what I've experienced. So that's useful too. But part of it is, you find during experience, you get so much information, you've got to do a regression or something to be able to just slow yourself down to access it all. Because the super conscious, whatever people want to call the divine over self, the thought adjuster, all these different names, it occurs everything that records everything that happens to you as an immortal soul, everything. So it can be accessed. And that's the way to kind of do that, especially for those that are operating on a faster vibration or frequency. And the further we get away from the event horizon, the harder it is to access the retention of memory. It's very odd, but that's how it works sometimes when you're dealing with a faster vibration. Or you could have that negative experience that got mind wiped. The old pen from Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, it's true. But I think opposed to hugging, I think they're actually sucking energy. Like the same way remoras. Well, I guess remoras are more feeding as they're traveling along with the shark, because the shark, everything it leaves around. But I believe that one is more like that episode of Star Trek where the space baby's out in the asteroids, it attaches to their Enterprise and it imprints and it starts sucking energy, and it's caused them a lot of problems. I think that it's more of an energy sucking deal than anything else. That's why I kind of call them remoras. Still a cool name though. Wow. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a friend that had just put their dog down from cancer. So I feel for you for that. One reason I don't have animals anymore, I love animals, but it just hurts so much when you lose them. Last animal I had was a 25-year-old um, cockatiel that I had as a child. He didn't die until I was like 33, 34 when he finally died. And it was just tragic. It's hard to lose them. Interesting. Yeah, the regression would be good. You can find out. A lot of times we'll gravitate towards an era or a culture or something that we were once. Seen that quite a bit. Etowah Miles, that's it. Yeah, on that David Pauletti's on that video goes over some things that even Jessica didn't know about the mounds, and she's pretty knowledgeable about them. She said one or two things that she didn't know that David went over concerning them. And what's odd enough, he said a lot of that information came from, let me hear it, Tom Powell, THOM, like Thom Powell. He does a whole bunch of things on the underground mounds. And I'm seeing him do a lot of work with Pauletti's right now. He's even in that new movie that he just put out. So that joys me no end. Tom's a good guy. And life meeting him was life changing. Although he's a bit weird, a bit strange, but his information was life changing. His viewpoint was super cool. And not just that, it was very one of those people was kind of just elating to talk to him. So anyway, but he collected a lot of that information about those mounds. Just had to throw that out there. Yeah. Thank you, Baja Girl. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here too. And I appreciate everybody that bothers to comment and come here and talk and listen to me rattle on and on and on. Hmm. Yeah, you got to be careful of dreams, because when you go through truly all the gates of dreaming, you realize that you're really in the middle of a electron impulse, and which is phantasmagorical images. And you've got other generating energy beings in our field of awareness that use that manipulate that imagery, can assimilate into it, become people. The worst ones show up as people we know and love, and they'll treat you horrible in those dreams, trying to get that, what's the word, loose going, that negative, um, deadly orgone radiation going. They're trying to do that in a dream state, and you can't really associate them from everything, the surroundings. They're masters of that. They're all over, including those in Human form. Yeah. Susan, what's up? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it's not easy. I'll be honest with y'all. No matter what the process is, even knowing that we don't get extinguished, I still think the whole death thing just sucks, man. By the way, Susan, you notice something? Your friend is now an expert on Sasquatch. If you caught that, that was just thrown to me. All of a sudden now we never didn't know anything about him even a year or two ago, but now all of a sudden we're expert on Sasquatch. Okay, oh boy. Anyway. Yeah, no problem, Donna. I'd be happy to work with you. I don't do QHAT, although I respect what they do, but I do a different system, and it's always interesting. Sometimes it goes a long time to find out what you need, and so much information comes out of those that it's a trip. And to be quite honest with you, no matter how many regressions I've done, I'm still blown away each time. I'd be feeling brand new because the information, it just blows you away. I think this was the mean you got to be as a children to get back into the kingdom. It looks like about everybody there, so I'm about to probably sign off. But I also say thanks everybody for being here. Jessica, thank you for helping me out. I know you got to be somewhere soon, so thanks for being my mod. I got a couple other users I want to be mods, and I said I would figure out how to do it, and I fell off, but I'll get there though. Okay. Hold on. What's up, Allison? I got 1 second left for you, Allison. Oh, my pictures of Linda Moulton Howell to you. Very do feel there lank lands. You mean lands are inhabitable in Antarctica? What you hear is it's very scarce, but if you go into that whole Admiral Byrd thing, which I think sometimes gets over sensationalized, but there's supposed to be a lot of habitable zones when you go inside of that port there. And you also hear things about, what is it, Mount Kinsley, that there's some habitable zones around there and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm far by an expert on Antarctica. I know that Brad Olson knows a lot about it. You got that one idiot dude that talks about the neutral converter, the guy with all the just for me. Yeah, he pisses everybody off, cocksucker. Yeah, anyway, don't like that cat. Just put on some more just for me and talk about your neutral converter. But anyway, they know much more about that area than I, okay? But it's very interesting. Now, as far as targets I gave to Jessica, I gave her the black octagons. They're supposed to be up there. And also, was it the containment area up there? Those are a couple of things I gave her in Antarctica. But I'm not very knowledgeable on that place, so I don't want to speak over. I know she's talked about the Black Pyramid there too. I don't think that was a target I gave her, one she had from somebody else, but good information concerning that, especially how they described the Black Pyramid appeared to be coated with Vanta Black. Anyway, yeah, I'm praying for your dog, definitely. And I want to thank you all for being here. Much love and power. I'll probably come back and do another one next week. I went a half hour over what I thought I would this time, but thank you all for being here. Any questions or comments, please post them in the other part of the comments down there. I appreciate you all being here, and peace.